Is This Normal? I'm Emily and my co-host Sarah, and this evening we are interviewing Lou Paget. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. We've had traded interviews, and I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate it. If you don't know who Lou Paget is, one, you've been under a rock for a really long time. Famous author, famous sexologist, and we will get, hopefully, a great history and update of what you've been doing, what you've been working on.
Happy to share. Happy to share.
Great.
We were having all kinds of fun before we went on, by the way.
Yeah, we do that.
So we're going to have to recapture that.
We'll recapture. We'll get you know, the pre-show.
We can do that. So is there any specific question you want to ask me that people would ask me?
Well, I think first of all, I would like a little bit of history. I know some of your background as to how you got into this and how this all started for you as a career. So if you can speak to that a little bit to get us started.
Okay. Huh.
How does one become this?
Bottom line is I wanted the information for me. I wanted to know, I had the sciences background, I had the botany, biology, zoology, and I wanted to know how stuff worked. And I'm terminally curious about sexuality, but from an area, Western Canada, where it was, you simply did not talk about this. And I said, I can't be the only one looking. So I started looking. And the typical places, I couldn't find information that worked. The adult industry, men marketing to men about what they know visually works for men. Oops, doesn't work for women.
Right.
Spank-a-vision is for entertainment and to self-pleasure too. It's not about what women's bodies like. So I looked at that and I went, nah. So then I started asking close friends after a couple of adult beverages. And that's when I said, listen, I need to know what you do really well. I don't want to do things with a gazillion people, but I want to know what really works for other people. So I started that. I started looking at all the information, any book I could get my hands on. I had the best library that my friends would come over and go, oh, can I just look at something? Borrow. And by the way, you know those books that they have all the positions? What a crock. You know what they'll do? They'll have a position here, and they'll say female on top. So let's say there's 120 pages. On page 30, she'll be going like this. And then on page 85, she'll be going like this. It's exactly the same thing, and they call it totally different things. It's like, all right, yep, please. Because they know people are going to get too wound up, and they'll never go from 35 to 85. And discover that it's the same thing. So I debunked the myth. Exactly. I'm like, okay, you have lied again. I want real people. I want real information. So I started asking, and I put together ideas of what other people said worked for them. Now, for all of us being in this area of sexuality, you know, like even if we knew things about, you know, your mother's peanut butter pie recipe, if you knew about peanut butter pies, you knew when someone was not telling you the truth. So when I heard someone give me information, as my friend who was at Playboy, Chip Rowe would say, he would know immediately when the guy wrote in about, you know, to the Playboy advisor, he says, I know this is this guy's fantasy. He said, the moment they go into any detail about the little socks, he said, I know it's the fantasy. He said, otherwise, this didn't just happen. Okay? So I said, I want the real goods. I want what real people did, but I want it to be genuine. So that's how it got started. And then my roommate at the time was a med student at UCLA, and she said, my friends want to know this. And I was like, oh no, I'm not telling people I know this. Are you kidding me?
This is for me.
I said, no. And she said, no, they really want to know. And that literally, that was like a focus group that turned into another thing, that turned into another thing. And literally the seminars took on a life of their own, and I just kept nodding. And from a business standpoint, what I did is I didn't do this thing about, these people need this. I listened to what people told me they wanted. Because as speakers, I think we all know that when you're speaking to an audience and you're trying to be you speaking to the audience, you're not giving the audience what the audience wants. The audience wants something they can identify with. That's about them, that they can go, oh, that's me. They do sort of want to know about you, but they don't want to know what you do.
Right.
That's really icky. That's like really icky. It's a way TMI.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no. So I wanted the goods, I wanted from real people, and then what I wanted is I wanted to have it be safe, because I was volunteering on the AIDS ward at Cedars-Sinai here in LA, which I did for 10 years until I got too busy with my books and everything else. So I literally listened when people said, you've got to tell this to other people. I was like, okay. I come from an entrepreneurial background, so it was like, okay, I can
Makes
do that.
sense. Mm-hmm.
And I was working at 20th Century Fox at the time. So I would be places, and people would say, do you know the woman who does those seminars is here? I said, really? No, wow, you're kidding me.
Someone does that?
That's kind of like shocking, isn't it? I'm still learning that. I'm at a high tea. A girlfriend of mine, it was her 40th birthday, and her boyfriend was doing this big lavish thing. So long room, big table, and all these women are lined up, and the little teas, little sandwiches, and all that little good stuff. So I get there, and I'm just a little bit late, and it's kind of a broad table at the end. There's 2 women at the end, then there's me, and then another woman, long table. And the women start talking, and they said, by the way, do you know so-and-so said the woman who does the seminars is here. And I'm listening to this, and I'm eating my little cucumber sandwich, and I'm going, well, I'm just going to hear what they say. Because at this point, I love being below radar.
It's a fly on the wall moment.
Yeah,
so you're there, but they don't know you're there for this kind of moment.
So here's what happened.
That
so
woman is there, but it's not you.
Yeah. So they started talking amongst themselves, and they said, then they went like this. I wonder who it is. And I thought, well, again, I'm here and looking down the table this way. I thought, if I didn't know it was me, who would I think it was? So they're all doing this, and I did the same thing, and we looked down the table, and there were 2 women who it absolutely could have been. Like a deep cut down to here, stuff. And then another one was, to here with this. And I'm wearing like a rolled sweater thing, and trust me, I'm not wearing pearls and like a little Peter Pan collar. But I'm sitting there, and I went, wow, this really is a lesson on how we perceive someone who knows about sexuality, what they're going to look like, and how they're going to behave. So I turned to them.
You need cleavage if you're going to
hear
about sexuality.
Here's the other thing. What's most people's assumption? That in order to talk about it, you must have done it. And so it's about your own, and it must be your own experiences that you're speaking of.
Right. You have to be your own focus group.
Right. And I was like, and I knew the information wasn't only about me. I mean, I've had hundreds of people tell me stuff. Women, men, you name it, and I'm like the bank vault. Tell me something, downloads, it's in. So here we are, all looking down the table, like who these women are, who I am. Picturing this. Oh, it's so great. And I turned to them and I went, ladies, it's me. And they went like this, no. And I said, no, I'm serious. It is not. And I said, no, it is. So I heralded the hostess, and I said, you can tell them I'm me. She goes like, no, that's her. At that moment, then there was like that switch, which we all know happens if someone finds out they can get information in this area from someone without a judgment factor. Then it's like the questions started. So what about this? What about this? What about this? And what I really...
This tea is going to last 5 hours.
Right. But what I saw is, again, the perception of if you know things in this particular field, we are going to get looked at differently. And I tell women from a business standpoint, when you are on camera and you are someone who's talking about this subject, for God's sakes, do not cross and uncross your legs in a short skirt. You may have the world's best legs. Don't do that. Just don't. They're expecting you to. Don't do what they think you're going to do. If you don't do what they think you're going to do, you create brain grenades, which has the information go in more easily. Because then they're kind of like this. Oh, because they think they know. Right. But we know, of course, they don't.
Right.
They don't.
Exactly.
That was in unison. They don't. So that's kind of how I got started. And the seminars turned into the books. So the books are, I have 4 of them here, but 5 books, 28 languages, 60 countries.
Wow.
Now, I didn't start writing books. That wasn't, I didn't. Someone just said, you've got to write a book. And I was like this, I'm not a writer. And they said, no, you've got to write a book. And I went, okay, well, I'll write a book. And I mean, I didn't study English. I took 1 English class in university. I got an F. Seriously, I didn't do the work. You don't get a grade, you don't enter a paper.
That's true.
That's not my most sterling moment.
I teach students, and
they
make that choice.
Yes.
You don't do the work, you don't fail.
Okay, true confessions, I had a crush on a guy in the class, and then I didn't even drop the class.
You gotta drop the class.
I know.
You have to drop the class.
I know, that was really bad. That was when I was, I graduated.
We all
We do it.
stuff.
We all do it. Yeah.
So that was in college. So that's how it got started, and it literally took on a life of its own. So now what I do is I do speaking presentations worldwide. I've been on a number of different panels, a number of different councils with 2 former Surgeon Generals, National Advisory Council with former Surgeon General David Satcher. I'm on the leadership committee for the first endowed chair in human sexuality, University of Minnesota Medical School. But what I do, what I'm known for is I'm like the general specialist, and with a broad base of knowledge. And honestly, we know this. If you don't know it, say you don't know it. Don't fudge. Don't fudge. You shoot yourself in the foot.
Absolutely.
But if I don't know it, I'll go and find someone who does. Which is why I brought you on after I'd done my interview on the 50 Shades, and I said, I need someone who knows this other area. I mean, I kind of sort of know it, but I don't know it.
Yeah.
I can't speak to it in a really, in a sort of like cellular level, and that's what I want people to get.
Yeah.
So that's how I started into it, and now the website is about to change. I have my ladies seminar, my gentlemen's seminar, which is where the impetus for the books.
Right.
So the men's seminar, just a little back up.
Yeah.
Ladies seminar got started, and then men said, please, if you're doing this for women, you got to do it for us.
Oh.
And that literally.
That's great.
And it was couples, and it was a group. There were probably about 18 different couples who spent a lot of time together. And I'd done a presentation for the bride. Her fiance called me up and said, do you do things for men? And I went like this. Yeah. Of course. The entrepreneur in me went, of course. Of course. And
Absolutely.
he said, because I want to be able to bring back to her what she was able to bring to me. And I went,
That's a good guy.
isn't it?
That's a really good
And I said,
wow.
then I said, when do you need this by? And he said, well, the bachelor party is going to be blah, blah, blah date. Now, my older sister is gay. As soon as I hung up the phone, I went like this, Sherry, no. What do I need to know about going down on a woman? I have no idea. And here's the thing. When you are having that done to you, you're not thinking about what someone's doing. It's like when you're having a massage, you're not analyzing technique.
Nope.
Your job is to feel.
Yes.
Your job is not to go, they were here, they were there.
They were using this, they were using that.
You're, and particularly as women, you go like this. Okay. You have to go in and focus. So I asked my older sister, I said, what do I need to know? Tell me these things. I asked every man I knew, and then I put together this men's presentation for them. At the time, so it was out in the valley somewhere along Ventura. Go into this restaurant, upper floor, and he had primed them all. So there were probably about 35 men there.
Wow.
And the gentleman who at the time was working with me as my assistant, Jay, had said to me, you are not going on this alone. I'm going with you. He said, no. And, I was wearing, black slacks, jean jacket, little, t-shirt. And I walk in, and these guys, it's like this room with a sort of row of seats, and there's a ring like here, and then there's some other guys there, and then there's another row in the back. And I walk in, and they start going like this, ooh, 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 ooh. And I was like this, oh my. And the guy who's the groom, the guy who's the stripper, the guy who's, BYOS, bring-your-own stripper. I mean, I thought, and I looked at him, and he goes, gentlemen, I told you you're going to see something you haven't seen before. And so I started talking, and the two guys who were like the most insistent on that, let's see what you can do, they were really quite inebriated, and they left very soon thereafter.
Sure.
But what happened is that I have models that I use, and at the time I was using one called Gentile, and what I liked about her is, it's a Doc Johnson, it was an adult star. When they did the molding, just inside the vaginal vault is an area that is exactly where the G-spot would be, which was so perfect.
Oh,
it was
wow.
fabulous. It was kind of like geography lesson they always wanted.
That's
So I gave them.
three-dimensional geography lesson.
Yeah, exactly. So I have them on plates. And this is what I did. I said, okay, gentlemen, I'm going to show you some things here that, they may not have told you. And chances are, if you're just looking at adult stuff, guys aren't going to know. So don't worry. but I'm gonna
Not
get you
your
up to
fault.
speed.
It's
You know,
just,
I'm gonna give you a
You
little
can't show
advantage.
that on film so easy.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you
It
an
doesn't work the
advantage.
same way.
So I showed them, and I had one gentleman whose wife had 3 children. He'd been at every single one of the deliveries there, catching the baby. And he said to me, "What is that thing inside that I feel? What is that? What is that?" And I looked at him and I said, "Can you put your finger on the end of your nose?" He went, "Yeah." I said, "Move it." I said, "Yeah." I said, "To feel like that?" He goes, "Yeah." He said, "It's the cervix." He said, "It is?" I said, "Yeah." And I said, "It's kind of a little more mobile." And he goes, "Yeah." And I said, that's, you know, as the cervix comes down, that's the extension of the final part of the uterus. And he goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "But the one thing that I really want people to get is, because sexuality education, really in large part, is body education. And it's telling people, you know, you have 2 sets of sexual nerves. You have the ability to have, you know, women, you know, 11 different types of orgasms. Men can have 8. This does not mean, God forbid, throw a gauntlet down and you have to get all 8.
All what?
Exactly. Guys go like this. I've only got 1 badge. Where's the rest of the badges? You can read all the badges.
It's like a brownie,
Right,
like
yeah,
a
so
Scout
the-
moment. I love it.
No, but what I want them to know is that the validation of it, that this is what can happen, and this may be what's happening to you or to your partner, because, and just use this as one example, female ejaculation, whether, you know, whatever term one wishes to use for it. For a lot of women, when they are first experience it, if they are with a partner, they're being told, "Oh my God, you peed on me."
Right.
"Oh my God, you know, what did you just do?"
Yep.
Yeah.
And did you ever see vagina monologues?
No, I was in vagina monologues.
Okay, in vagina monologues, where the woman is talking about the flood in the car.
Yes.
That is female ejaculation, which made sense because that was the time when you did so much heavy petting,
Right.
and you couldn't have a break.
Right.
So
Chances are.
chances are
That would-
that's what that
Yeah.
was.
Yep.
So enough on me. You guys asked.
That's great.